look at the affidavit of one Edgar Ouko Otumba. That affidavit, he swore two affidavits, a supplementary affidavit, and the first affidavit, which he filed on the 22nd of August. And my lords, in that affidavit, he makes the case, and Mr. Otumba has got a doctorate degree in applied statistics from Maseno University, and indeed he did assist this court in the previous petition in 2017. And he talks to the difficulties that confronts us in terms of the various announcements that the chairman of the Electoral Commission made. And he states that on the 9th of August 2022, the respondent issued a communique, that is on paragraph 10 of his affidavit, on the day of the election, that the total voter turnout at 4 p.m. nationwide was at 56.17%. And that statement update is annexed to the affidavit sworn by the second petitioner, Madam Martha Karua. Then, at the close of the voting, the first respondent again issued a statement that the total number of voter turnout, based on the KIMS kit, was 65.4%, which culminates in a total of 14,466,779 votes. And that communique is borne out in the affidavit again of the second petitioner. In an affidavit that is sworn on behalf of the petitioners, first and second petitioners, Mr. Nyangasi Oduo, in his affidavit, he talks to the Form 34C, and I'd referred to this earlier, where the total number of vote cast is 14,213,000. Now, the same Mr. Edgar Otumba saw a supplementary affidavit on the I think this affidavit was sworn on just a minute. On the 20th of August 2002. And I invite you, my ladies and your lordships, to look at this affidavit, because it analyzes several scenarios, including scenarios where the rejected votes are not computed, and scenarios where the declaration made by the chairman of the Electoral Commission as to the manual votes which were cast, which were recorded 86,889, and where those votes recorded as manual votes are computed together with the votes that were transmitted electronically. And then scenarios that would include the constituencies where the votes were declared later, including Ella's constituency. Now, the central point, and I want to make this point again, that the case that we are trying to make out is that if you look at the declaration made by the chairman as to the voter turnout, that will give you, as a percentage of the total number of registered voters, it will give you the number of voters that turned out to vote in the election, as opposed to another way of arriving at the same result, simply counting the number of voters that were recorded to have voted and cast their vote in the election. It is an equation that must agree in a mass submission. If the total number of voters that take part in the election do not agree with the votes that are counted as cast in accordance with Article 138(4), if they don't agree, then it means that the results of that election are not accurate, they're not transparent, and they're not accountable. And therefore, I'm inviting your ladyship and your lordship to go through this affidavit of Mr. Edgar Uko Otumba, because he lays out clearly the several scenarios in which it is quite clear the second respondent, one William Samoei Ruto, could not have garnered 50% plus one of the vote cast in the election. And since all that is in our submissions and is in the two affidavits that are referred to, I invite your ladyships and your lordships to go through, and you find that it is indeed very compelling, the analysis given out by Dr. Edgar Otumba. Now, your ladyship and my lords, I'd also invite you to look at the affidavit of one Celestine Anyango Opio, and in that affidavit, which enumerates several constituencies, including Shepa Lungu and many others, where in terms of the results as transmitted to the public portal, there was a systematic deduction of the votes cast for the first petitioner, and the same number of votes that were deducted from the petitioner were added to the votes of the second respondent. And the unique thing about this scheme is that the number of votes cast, the total number of votes cast, remained the same. The difference only was to the extent that the same number of votes that was deducted from the petitioner were given to the second respondent. And I leave that to your lordships to look through when you retire, because the Form 34As in respect of those particular polling stations are attached to the affidavit of Celestine Anyango Opio. There is also the affidavit, two affidavits from Arnold Ochieng Oginga, and this is particularly important because it contains discrepancies of the results in several areas and in voter turnout in Form 334C and the KIMS kit. And all this, my ladies and my lords, taken in totality, would affect the results of the elections. In paragraph 16 up to the end, he goes out analyzing areas where there were discrepancies. And you would notice, my lords and my ladies, that in totality, the discrepancies accounted for votes which are more than 140,000 votes. And in our submission, that has an impact on the result of the elections as declared. And I invite your lordships and my ladies to look at those particular analysis and annexures attached to the affidavit of Arnold Oginga. In the same way, in a further affidavit, Mr. Arnold Oginga carries out an analysis in response to the responses to the petition by the respondents. And my lords, again, you would notice the number of votes that were being manipulated in order to secure a result that would favor the second respondent. And we have attached the relevant documentation, the forms showing the results, from 34A's, 34B's, those particular forms. And finally, the Form 34B, which is a collation of votes at the constituency tallying centers. Now, my lords, I would conclude by saying that unlike many elections, this particular election, there was deceit, there was manipulation, and all this was premeditated and made possible by the attack, if I may put it that way, on the IT structure and system of the Electoral Commission. The way that the Commission was able to deal with the forms when uploaded and downloaded, staged, transmitted, deleted, all this in totality, if you look at the case we put before you, my lords and my ladies, set out in the affidavits that I referred to, shows an election that was rigged in favor of the second respondent. And on that basis, my lords, we urge that you nullify the elections on the basis of the fact that the second respondent did not attain more than 50% plus one of the votes cast in the election. I thank you, and now invite Ms. Julie Soweto to deal with the second limb of our submissions.